Hi, my name is Jim. I am a childhood sexual abuse survivor, and I've been diagnosed with OCD. I always thought OCD was something like what you see in movies where somebody can't stop washing their hands or they freak out if they step on a crack on the sidewalk. My particular set of behaviors had a lot to do with just being really uptight about being late, for example, or really uptight about not being able to get something done within the time frame. And I think to an outsider, they would think that that's just somebody who has a really great work ethic or just accomplishes goals. But for me, it was a compulsion that would cause a lot of stress. Played high school football. If I didn't win every single lap, even just a warm-up lap around the field, I would beat myself up about it. So for 4 years, I was first every lap. Coaches loved it. They didn't realize that I was doing it because I felt like I was gonna be lit on fire if I didn't. The anxiety piece, they were throwing all kinds of drugs at that, and none of them worked. And I would just get more and more upset and tense and anxious and hard to be around. Just super, super intense and a personality type, if you will. I just got lucky that a friend of a friend said, we should have Jim try something for OCD. And luckily I found someone who got me on a different medication, and my life's been much better since, especially internally. I just don't feel that same burning push to tick certain boxes. I don't know how else to say it. I wouldn't be able to predict what it was I had to do, but something would come up and my brain would say, you have to get that done perfectly and you have to get it done by this time. And if anything got in the way of that, I would be extremely hard to be around. If I go back 20 years, there was nothing to compare it against, so I didn't know what a good or bad day was. It was just a day. When I was finally diagnosed properly, I would think it was about 2010, 2009, something like that. So if I look at the few years before that and then the few years after, it's a very clear contrast. And I would say that everything just slowed down. I almost was able to breathe more deeply and think about one thing at a time and not be scared that I was turning people off by my personality. Because when you have something like OCD or I imagine other mental illnesses, it's not as if you don't know. It's not as if you don't know what a pain in the ass you're being. You are aware of it. You're kind of powerless to stop it. And sometimes you're only aware of it when it's way too late to do anything about it or prevent it. But you could be like right in the middle of ranting about something or seething or kicking something because you're pissed off because things didn't work out exactly the way you needed them to. And there's this little remove from yourself that's saying, this is not normal. This is not how, well people act. And you're somewhat aware of people, not always physically, but definitely emotionally pulling away from you because you're that hard to be around. I really feel bad for my ex-wife, because it was during that time, that it was probably at its worst. And when I finally found the right help, finally found the right medication, she said I was 80% easier to be around within 2 weeks. So while that felt good, it made me feel awful about people having to deal with me, before that. Nobody wants to be hard to be around. And it's a weird mixture of guilt and frustration and sadness, that despite what you really want to happen, all you're doing is irritating people, pushing people away, making people less inclined to want to spend time with you. The way OCD is that, or at least it was for me, is you just keep trying. You just keep trying harder and harder. So you all know who that guy is or that girl is. That's the one who instantly wants to be your best friend and will not stop until it happens. And you may like them initially, but then you're like, this is way too much. This is way too much love from this person. I need to take a step back because I don't know what's going on. But this is not right. It's not appropriate. And for the person who's going through that, you see them pull away, you're used to it, it's happened before, and you're just so desperate to stop it that, of course, you try harder. and then they pull away harder. I mean, this is the kind of stuff you talk about in middle school, you know, when you're like in 6th grade and you just want to be everybody's friend. And if they don't want to be yours, it's the end of the world. It's no different when I was like 43, 44. It was right around when, you know, I think it was around that time when I found the right meds. And right up until that time, I was like in tears at times. It's just like, why don't these people like me? And it's kind of pathetic. I mean, you're a middle-aged man with kids and a career, and your feelings are hurt because people don't want to hang out with you at the cool lunch table. But it's very much like that. I think every kid wants to be accepted, right? I mean, every human does, but especially when you're going through puberty, that's when everything is just so ramped up, and those connections are important, and you're going through those really important questions about who you are and who you're going to be. You know, what do you bring into the table as a person? And it was right about 11 when my experience with sexual abuse happened, and it was really crushing. Not necessarily because it was such a graphic experience. Didn't need to be. It was terrifying. And it just so happens that when I was a kid, I was really small physically and very kind of pretty or effeminate looking, you know, very delicate, just a little kid, you know, a little boy, even though I was, you know, 11, 12, 13. And trying to feel like a man, trying to, you know, embrace masculinity and what it means, you know, to actually be masculine. I think most 13-year-old boys go through that regardless of what they're, nothing to do with sexual inclination. It's just, you know, what is a man, right? So for that to happen at that time really made me wonder a lot. I mean, I felt terrified, unable to protect myself. I wondered if I had brought it on myself somehow. I even wondered if maybe deep down I was gay and that was why this happened. You know, all these questions come into your head in that time frame when you're going through it. Puberty doesn't help you very much at those moments, and I felt very lonely, you know, because it wasn't the kind of thing that people talked about, and I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want it to be obvious that, you know, this had happened. So I threw myself, and it's really funny when I think back about it, how clear this is. I threw myself into every sport possible that could result in me being hurt. I mean, I needed to take on as many risks as I could. I started lifting weights. I played linebacker on our football team when I was 140 pounds. I wrestled. I got in fights. I did reckless things. And then as I got a little bit older, I ended up wrestling competitively and did that until I was 40 and my body was literally falling apart. Then I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and I've been doing that ever since. You know, I've been collecting tattoos, and, you know, that's just an aesthetic thing. But when I was younger, if you had a bunch of tattoos, you know, in 1988, 1989, that was a serious badass move. It wasn't like they were everybody, right? I was working so hard to prove to myself and anybody that looked at me that you do not fuck with me, that you are not going to get away with putting your hands on me. And it was all about that looking back. But you add that, right, to the OCD, which made me a little tough to be around anyway. And I was a real challenge for people for quite a while. You know, I had a big chip on my shoulder. I definitely was more than happy to, you know, to get aggressive, get physical, you know, if the situation even remotely called for it. It wasn't because I wanted to fight. I wanted to scare people away from hurting me or potentially hurting me. When you go through it, you don't know. You know, you don't realize that you're the victim of something like that that's had long-lasting ramifications. You don't realize when you're going through something like having OCD, you know, that this isn't right. This is just your experience. You get good at noticing when people are reacting to you, but it's not like there was this alarm going off in the back of my head saying, yeah, you know, there's something off. It took a long time to really understand that. And those things all together, it's a potent mix, you know, and it can really lead to feeling isolated, or maybe in another way, another version of loneliness is seeking out people that really aren't your tribe, but they make you feel tougher or safer. I worked at a nightclub as a doorman for a while. I'm not that tough a guy, but I definitely can pretend I'm a tough guy. I hung out with a lot of guys that were military veterans. I wasn't, but I glommed on to these little subcultures because it made me feel more like the guy I wish that I was. So many guys I know in that world, whether it's, combat sports or martial arts or things like that. Definitely the police force, or maybe even the military. These are guys that have so much pain. They've got so much pain. And the way that they react is to make themselves harder so that they don't ever have to go through more of it. I have been lucky to meet a few other people that have gone through similar stuff. One of them is my friend John, who, gave a very inspiring testimony about what he went through, and it so closely mirrored some of the stuff that I went through. It was surprising, especially the part about wanting to turn yourself into some version of a weapon so that people wouldn't mess with you. That I got. Man, there's so much work that can be done, with helping people being able to address that idea of what masculinity is and what it isn't. And instead of just dismissing people who kind of really dive deep into those types of practices as, that's just toxic masculinity, and just dismissing it and dismissing those people as douchebags or bros or whatever, there's a reason why people dive into something that deep, and a lot of times it's just their own way to deal with whatever pain they've got. So they cover up that internal pain by beating their bodies up to the point of no return. And we talk a lot about loneliness in this exercise or this initiative, and maybe the real loneliness is just not being able to embrace who you are and not just be you, because you've got this other stuff you're dragging around with you that takes you in other places. It's hard to look back and look at some of the choices you made because you were just scared and lonely, and not shake your head and go, how did I not see that? How did I not know what was going on? And maybe get, some help, find some people that might have been able to get it and help me not feel so desperate. As I've gotten older, the really funny thing is that I've become milder and milder in my personality, but I actually am like a pretty established martial artist now, which is really funny because, I always wanted to be the tough guy. And now, one could argue that, the experience I've had, I'm legitimately able to take care of myself, but I got zero interest in having to prove it, which is nice. I think that's the way it's supposed to be. Real strength comes from not having to use it. I certainly didn't understand that for a long time. It's perfectly okay for you to train, lift, spar, compete, push yourself as hard as you want to, and explore that part of your life as much as you want to. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to. You're not going to need it in order to feel happy or loved or safe. I know it feels like it, but you don't. You've got people who have your back. If you can let them know what you're going through, you will be shocked at how safe they make you feel.